This is kind of a game changer, isn't it?
This is a game changer. I believe the nuclear option has just been taken. Yeah. I cannot believe a year into this presidency, they have just done this. The NAACP Chairman Julian Bond said in a radio interview, do we have what he said? Okay, listen to this. This is the chairman of the NAACP.
We don't remember the king who was the critic of capitalism, who said to Charles Fager when they were in jail together in Selma in 1965 that he thought a modified form of socialism would be the best system for the United States. We don't remember the Martin Luther King who talked ceaselessly about taking care of the masses and not just dealing with the people at the top of the ladder. So we've anesthetized him. We've made him into a different kind of person than he actually was in life. And it may be that's one reason he's so celebrated today, because we celebrate a different kind of man than really existed. But he was a bit more radical, not terribly radical, but a bit more radical than we make him out to be today.
Okay, hold on just a second. Wow. This is, and correct me if I'm wrong, America. Maybe I'm wrong, but I didn't think it was politically correct ever.
Oh my, no.
To say that Martin Luther King was a socialist. Ever. I believe this is the first time I've ever heard this from someone, on the side of praising Dr. Martin Luther King. I've heard people say, oh, well, he was a communist, he was a socialist.
FBI had files on him.
Okay, I've never heard this as praise for Martin Luther King.
Anybody who's ever said it has been beat down.
Beat down. But listen to the words.
Wow.
Listen to the words. We don't remember the king that was a critic of capitalism, that wanted a modified form of socialism that thought would be the best system for the United States, that talked ceaselessly about taking care of the masses and not just the people at the top of the ladder. We celebrate a man that is different than the kind of man that really existed. And maybe that's why he's so celebrated. Do you hear this?
That's a total admission. That if Martin Luther King, if it got out that he was a socialist or a communist,
he wouldn't be as celebrated.
He wouldn't be.
Okay.
Well, he wouldn't be.
He wouldn't have been. Okay, so listen. So why in your wildest dreams would you do this? In your wildest dreams, would the president or the chairman of the NAACP say that Martin Luther King was not terribly radical, but more radical than we thought, basically a radical socialist? Why would you do that? A guy who we have combined George Washington and Abraham Lincoln. We've combined their birthdays, taken a holiday away from one of them and made it, a double. These two guys only deserve one day together. They can share it together. We'll call it President's Day. This is Martin Luther King Day. Do you understand the icon that we have created? And then now to come out and say he was a radical socialist this Martin Luther King holiday. Why would you do that? You are putting every chip up on the table.
After Massachusetts, you have to. You have to.
I don't know if this was after Massachusetts. This happened this week. I don't know if it was Monday or not. But you saw it coming on Monday. You saw it coming on Monday. But why would you do that? Look what you're risking here. If radical socialism is discredited, you have then tainted the image of Martin Luther King. You have a holiday for a guy who, if America, he just said, I think it's probably why we celebrate him the way we do now, because we're celebrating somebody who really didn't exist that way. He was different than that. Now, they're either saying here, the left, that America is a radicalized, not terribly radicalized, but a radicalized socialist nation. And so we'll accept it now.
No.
Or they're saying, well, that's just the way it is. And I think this is probably more a likely scenario, that the president is under fire. And we know that a radicalized socialist is a label that is going to be attached to this president. And so we want to show you that a radicalized socialist is Martin Luther King, and it's okay.
He's got his own holiday.
Right.
It's perfectly fine.
If, because now they're tying the fortunes of Barack Obama's policies to Martin Luther King. If radicalized socialism falls apart, what happens to the image of Martin Luther King? What if America rejects that? Will America be okay with a guy who the picture that is coming out of the White House to more and more people every day, that these are radical socialists. Some of them, Van Jones, a radical communist, that they believe in Chairman Mao. That, to quote Ron Bloom, power comes from the end of a gun. To quote Anita Dunn, one of my favorite philosophers is Chairman Mao. If this is discredited, you've just put every chip you have on the table into the kitty. When I said to you, I didn't think it would happen this fast. When I said to you, I believe it was last night, I warned about it on Monday, but last night I did a monologue where I said, Thomas Paine wrote Common Sense to convince people to declare themselves independent of the British Empire. And it was a tough struggle. But the easy part, believe it or not, was declaring themselves independent and swearing to each other their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honor. The hard part was actually living that. Tuesday with Scott Brown, the easy part was 51% of the voters walking in and saying, I'm not a Republican or a Democrat, but I'm voting for Ron Brown, and declaring themselves independent. And I said the system, just like the British, the system will now push back and react. I don't know I don't know how to interpret this any other way. I don't know when it became politically okay to say that Martin Luther King was a radical socialist. You wouldn't even say that about President Obama. If I got on the air and said the guy is a radical socialist, which I do, they hammer me to death. Well, if it's okay that Martin Luther King was a radical socialist, why is it bad to say Barack Obama is a radical socialist? Am I reading this wrong?
I don't think so.
I'm waiting for another explanation.
We'll see what kind of fire, if any, Julian Bond comes under. I mean, if this is totally rejected.
Let's look for the kind of fire. This is because this is they're booby traps from the progressive left everywhere. I can't see the booby trap on this one, but maybe there is. There are booby traps everywhere. Let's see if I come under fire from the left for reporting Julian Bond and saying, okay, this is what he said. When did radicalized, not terribly radical, to quote Julian Bond, but a radical socialist, when did that become acceptable in America? If we didn't celebrate, if he wouldn't have been as celebrated today had that news come out, when did it become okay and expect us to celebrate it today? Let's see how much fire I come under for asking that question.